Time to begin our October 20th meeting. At this time, we'll call ourselves to order. This time, I'll turn it over to our city manager, Mr. Blair.
Mr. Mayor, before we go to the consent agenda, have the city manager discuss the items on the consent agenda. I would like to have custom service modifications removed from the consent agenda so it can be discussed.
What number is that, Bill?
So number 4.
Number 4. Okay. Item 4 will be pulled for discussion.
Thank you, Mayor and members of City Council. The City Council uses a consent agenda to consider items that are non-controversial and routine. The consent agenda is acted upon by one motion and voted for the Council. Items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda at the request of a council member or citizen with the consent of Council. The consent agenda contains the following items, and there are 7 items now on the consent agenda, 12 overall. Item 1 involves the approval and acceptance of the minutes and reports. There are 8 sets of minutes. Item 1I is disbursement of for fiscal year 2015 to 2016 City Council discretionary funds. 4 members made 9 disbursements. Council members have $3,000 each of discretionary funds available during the fiscal year. The first involved Councilmember Anthony had 2 disbursements of $500 and $330 to one to the Christian Family Care Home and the second to the Congressional Black Caucus Conference, respectively.
I have a question, and I want to know if you can just answer my question or if I need to pull that off. But why was the second one, it was a conference, why was that not taken out of the travel budget?
Discretionary, there's no limitation on using discretionary funds for travel.
I think the question you may be asking, Councilmember Duncan, is were there funds available in the travel account? And I believe that in that case there may not have been, and so the discretionary fund was utilized as it can be utilized by any council member for travel as well.
Well, we have a travel budget in order to pay our travel out of that budget, and it's set up specifically for travel, whereas discretionary funds was set up for a different purpose. If I'm not correct, please correct me.
You're correct, ma'am, that the purpose of the discretionary fund is for use for council discretionary purposes, but that also means that any public purpose would be permitted. And so staff had been asked the question if the discretionary funds could be used for travel purposes, and prior to the modifications of the travel budget and the travel policy, they were allowed to be used for that if necessary, and so that continues. If council wishes to change the policy to make that expressly clear that it cannot be used, that would be a council decision.
Then I would make that motion, because that my intent, my understanding of
Point of order. I'm going through the consent items. If there's an item to be discussed,
We want it pulled.
We'll pull it off.
I'll pull. Yeah.
All right, which one is that number?
That would be 1I,
Mr.
Mr. Mayor.
1I. Okay.
We've always used
Oh,
discretionary.
right, hold on. I'm going to pull that, and it'll be discussed.
Okay.
Hold it. All right, item 1I will be pulled for discussion. We'll come into it.
Okay, item 1J, 1J, Finance Committee reports for September 2015. The unassigned general fund balance is $7.2 million for fiscal year ending 16 as of September 30th, and the total fund balance is reported as $27 million through June 30th. Item 1K is summary of contracts awarded, change orders approved, city manager settlement of claims, and city manager's discretionary fund. There were no claims settled during this period, and the number of contracts awarded are 45, of which 23 are in support of the air show, for a grand total of $242,000 in change. Item 2 on consent is Alcoholic Beverage Control Board travel policy for the purpose of the annual approval of the travel policy, which is required by the State ABC Commission. Item 3 is appointment of voting delegates for the National League of Cities annual business meeting, and this is for the purpose of designating Councilmember Anthony as the city's voting delegate for the November 7th session. Item 4 was removed from the consent agenda. Item 5 is the fee waiver request by Union Academy for the purpose of waiving the permit fees in the amount of $250 for 2 building permits and 1 zoning permit associated with doors and a shed at the upper and lower campuses. Item 6 is Golden Leaf Foundation and North Carolina Rural Division Grant Agreement. This is for the purpose of accepting grants from those agencies in the amount of $280,000 and $237,000 for utility capital improvements that support ATI specialty materials expansion involving $70 million of capital investment that will add 70 new jobs. Item 7 is the Monroe Union County Community Development Corporation and Habitat Utility Fee Waiver Program. For the purpose of rescinding a resolution to support the fee waiver program and replacing it with a grant program similar to our downtown payment assistance program. This action removes the current requirement for deed of trust between the home buyer of a CDC-funded home construction and the city for the amount of the waived utility fees that are provided to low-income residents participating in either the CDC or Habitat housing programs. And Mayor, this concludes the synopsis of the items proposed for consent.
Okay, we'll go back to the items that's pulled. I, under number 1,
Mayor, you could actually go ahead and have council vote on the items that have not been pulled, and then that way those items will be adopted, and then you could, yes, sir.
okay, do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
I make a motion with the exception of those items pulled.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that'll pass. And coming back to I under number 1 for discussion, and Lynn, I believe you.
Yeah, I think discretionary fund has always been made quite clear that it was for a council member not to use in any way for theirself, but for homeless shelter, the turning point, or church, ever what you thought deserved some type of help during the year, which I totally support. But we had a travel budget of $4,000 for council members, and I think we need to stick to that. I don't think discretionary funds should be used in travel. Not the intent of the purpose.
Okay, any other discussion, comments?
I don't have any problems with the discretionary fund per se used for other things, but we have a separate travel budget. And like Lynn said, if we have a travel budget, we modified that travel budget last year because we had some issues last year, and that's why we had that travel budget. So we need to stick with that travel budget and need to prioritize, and if we need to change that, then that should have been brought before the full council. If we needed to add money to that budget, we should have been able to vote on it and not been able to use that for something else. And that was just my question, is why it was used, a travel disbursement was taken out of discretionary instead of travel.
Okay,
So what I'd like to ask the city manager is what's the amount of travel that's taken out of the discretionary money?
I don't have that number. I mean, we can certainly find it out for you.
I'd like to go ahead, I mean, it's clear motion, and that is, we had $4,000 in our budget for travel. And I move that that's what we use it for, and the discretionary money is used for purposes such as you want to donate to during the year, but is not in any way used for the individual.
Or maybe what we could do, though, is combine those funds and maybe have one price, one amount of money in those funds, and then you can use it either for travel or for discretionary money. That's just my opinion, that's my thought.
Then, go ahead, Majid, I didn't.
Well, it would perhaps may be the appropriate thing, because you're talking about currently two different funds. If you would like for staff to explore how to modify it in this context, as opposed to going ahead and adopting that change, perhaps you give us an opportunity to look at both of those, because you're talking about a modification of the travel policy as well as in a modification to discretionary funding. That may be, of course, staff will do, if council directs us by a vote to go ahead and make those changes, we will. It may be more appropriate that we take a look at what changes would be needed and bring that back if you feel that's appropriate for full council. But We, of course, will do what council requests, directs us to.
I don't have a problem with the staff looking it over, but I think that it's always been pretty clear that we had X number of dollars for travel, and we had X number of dollars to use as a discretionary fund, and it's never been used for, discretionary has never been used for travel. You know, I can pick a number. I don't know if it's staff. What do you think, Larry? You want to?
That's what they want to do. I want to know if the council wants to go ahead and vote on it, wants them to take it back and study it and come back with a recommendation.
Well, I mean, this, if I may, I mean, we will put into the policy whatever the board decides. To Majib's point, I think it would be more proper if the board gave us guidance to develop a provision to put in the travel policy and bring it back to you. But I will emphasize that they're going back to June, July, or August, we found no prohibition to using discretionary, so there was no flag for us to throw up.
And it always been used for one for one and one for the other. Now you could combine and add a little more money and just say that, let's say $5,000, and you could use it for travel or discretionary. You could go that route with the mayor pro tem 6 and the mayor at 7, or you can stick to the 4-3.
Well, I guess you could talk all night and everybody got a different idea. I think it'll be kept separate. You got so much for this and so much for that.
Then basically it ought to be kept 4,000 for travel and 3,000 for discretionary, with discretionary not being used for travel. And if that needs to be made clear, then I'll make that motion that the two do not overlap.
Is that what you want them to study and come back to the policy?
That's what I'm going to make a motion that we adopt.
I would ask if perhaps the board would want to consider a policy that defines what discretionary would be used, rather than, I mean, travel is the issue today, it would be something else tomorrow.
Well, I think it's whatever that we have a fund for. If we have a fund for something else, then you would not use it for that. If you don't have a fund for something else, you have a definition of public purpose. So as long as it fit a public purpose, but we have a separate travel budget that's supposed to be used for travel. That's the difference. If it doesn't have a separate budget for that, then you can use it out of your discretionary fund if it fits a public purpose.
We're right in line with Charlotte, which is a lot bigger town than we are on our travel, because that was all looked at. You know, if you want to give your money to education, or if you want to give it to most anything, everybody's always had different uses for their discretionary money. I don't know how everybody's used it, but I don't think it's ever been used for travel.
We need to keep it separate.
Need to keep it separate. Travel needs to be treated as travel, and discretionary needs to be treated as discretionary.
Well, maybe, Lynn, we can make a motion that we go back and certainly look at that, especially since we have 2 council members that are not here tonight, that we can bring this back up and come up with a policy on exactly what can be used for discretionary funding besides just the public purpose.
I'll also make that motion. That's a good idea.
And I'll second it.
May I ask the maker and the seconder of the motion, would you want that to come back to the full council or bring that back to a committee as you had with the prior travel discussion?
I would bring it to full council.
Okay. Everybody, we got a motion. All in favor for Larry Majib to work this out and come back with a recommendation? Any opposed? Hearing none, that'll pass, okay? And now we're going to item 4.
Mayor, the Customer Service Committee discussed this issue, and I was hoping that this would be a part of a full City Council discussion in open session, so that the paper might pick up on it. I was hoping that the Customer Service Department would have talked to service providers that provide people with additional funds for their utilities, would have contacted each one of the approximately 160-something residents that's going to be impacted by this policy. And is it your desire tonight, Larry, that this policy go into effect where, we would basically eliminate the additional 10 days for people who have medical services that keep us from cutting off their utility bills? Is that what you're trying to do tonight?
Yes, to move this forward. As discussed, generally discussed at the committee meeting, the staff has reached out to the stakeholders and affected populations and notified them that a change was likely and possible, and to begin adjustments. If the board would like an overview, we've got key staff here that can give a synopsis of those changes.
I would like, who's here that can, okay.
I don't even know what the changes are. Didn't know you have a change.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Lisa Strickland with the Finance Department, Finance Director. This change is proposed to bring our medical customers in line with the rest of the folks. We attended a session at School of Government, and it was brought out that you cannot treat any particular class of people for whatever reason differently than another class, and we're just trying to bring our policy and procedures into line with state law. Basically, our billing cycle allows 25 days for customers to make a payment. If not paid by that due date, a late notice is sent and they get an additional 10 days. Our medical customers were receiving an additional 10 days beyond that. We're proposing to eliminate that additional 10 days. We have noticed all of the medical customers by direct mail out, and we will continue to notify any medical customers that are in danger of disconnection by door hanger to contact the customer service office before we do cut them off. The state did say that it is, reasonable to afford them at least that courtesy of that notification.
Question, I don't quite understand. You said we were doing away with the 10 days, but you just said we were giving them 10 days. Which is it?
They have 25 plus 10, so they have 35 days to pay, but medical had 45. They got an additional 10 over everybody else. We're just cutting them back to
That is it.
35.
And why are we changing that?
So that we're not in violation of the state law that says we can't do one thing for one customer that we're not doing for another. Is that going to get us in legal trouble if we do that machine?
No, if we do what we're recommending, it will ensure we're not in legal trouble because the statute doesn't allow us to discriminate against similarly situated customers. If we maintain our current practice, that subjects us to legal exposure. That is why staff has recommended the changes to ensure that we do not create legal
Let me
exposure.
ask a question, because I've never been one that was politically correct anyway.
Sir.
But if you've got somebody that's on a medical machine, why shouldn't they get an extra 10 days? I mean, they're in a whole lot worse shape than somebody else is. How can the state come tell us how we can practice and how we can't?
It is, as we are creatures of the General Assembly, when they create a statute, specifically the public enterprise statute that governs what we do, they tell us we cannot discriminate against similarly situated customers. So council has the choice to say yes to this or no, and as long as you're aware that it potentially subjects the city to exposure, that is what staff would know if you wish to continue with the current policy in that regard.
Where would the exposure come from, most likely?
A citizen who, for example, let's say we subject them to the normal 25 plus 10, and theirs is shut off, whereas they then are aware that there's someone who gets a 25 plus 10, and they were not shut off. And so if they contend that they were treated differently, they can raise an equal protection argument under state law, under the state constitution, which potentially subjects us not only to damages, but attorney's fees.
So do other cities give them 25 plus 10 plus 10 or 25 plus 10? Do we know?
They may have different bill cycles, but they're not affording them extra time.
So I think what the issue is that we either give 10 extra days for the people that are on machines or that are medically incapacitated in a home, or we take 10 days away to make it equal for everybody, or we add 10 days and we give everybody 10 days. Is that basically what I'm understanding?
Yes, ma'am.
What's this?
I don't think we want to go down that extra 10 for everybody.
So
What happens is it gets them so far behind
Right.
that then they can't catch up. It sets them up.
have you checked with the Lexington, Salisbury, and comparable sized cities to see how they handle them?
You know of any other special programs?
We haven't checked recently, or we're just going with what Karen Lines have given us direction on with that class.
How many medical customers that we comes out of that?
About 150. A lot of them have, we were looking at the types of equipment and make sure that, we weren't cutting off somebody's, vital service. A lot of it is nebulizers, the majority of them. Some of them were respirators. There was a couple to that effect, which would be ones that we would be more cautious.
And you've already sent out notices.
What are we looking at?
We sent a letter out saying that the effective date would be November 1st for, upon adoption of these modifications in the policy.
Did you do it with registered mail or just a letter?
Regular mail.
And have they been consistent as far as being the 10 days late and then at 10 days they pay, or how's that work?
Some yes, some no. It seemed like when we were looking at the ones that had the really serious type of equipment, those people paid within the time frame anyway. Some of the other ones that maybe had nebulizers took advantage of the 10 days.
Well, I just want to be sure if we do that, I just want to be sure that that 150 gets that notice. Because if somebody falls through the grate, which always are, and I don't want to see that happen to one of them. And they say, well, we didn't know, because it'd be tragic if they didn't know.
Well, really, the number is so small, and we do have a customer service department. And I'm certain that in a period of a day, they could take 30 minutes out of their time. You could personally call or contact every one of those 150 people to let them know. I mean, if that be the case, if you're worried about
Well,
that.
I just wonder if it's registered letter,
Yeah.
and I'm not telling you how to do, I just want to be sure they know, because I can promise you, and y'all know better than I do, out of 150, there's gonna be 50 said, well, we didn't know nothing about this.
Yeah, the problem with the register's letter is they let them lay at the post office and they never bother to go get it.
Well, I know that's just something,
We've tried that in the past as
well, I
well.
just want to say, you know better than I, but
Yeah.
I just want to be sure that they know.
Right.
50 of them don't come up and say, well, we never heard of this.
We've had a handful
Well,
of
I'm gonna get that
calls.
call.
Of the 150, what's the frequency that, of those 150 that their services are interrupted for failure to pay? Approximate,
The bill cycle,
approximate.
there's probably 60, 75 a month.
No, of that 150.
Well, probably half
Medical.
of them that we have to go and interrupt.
Half, she said.
Half? So it's a problem with half, the timeframe is immaterial, there's a problem with half of them anyways, is the point. So,
But if they call you up or you talk to them, would you extend it, or would you just say, no, that's the policy and we'd have to cut it off?
It depends. We hang a door hanger on their door before we cut them off, asking them to contact customer service. Once they contact customer service, I think if are they still allowed 3 extensions in addition or no?
If the change goes through, we're gonna allow them extensions from now to the end of this year, and then they'll have the 3 extensions just like all the other customers next calendar year. But currently, with them getting the extra 10 days if they call, we pretty much have to stick with that extra 10 days because they've already been granted the additional time. We just make them aware of when the interruption's gonna happen. We can't go outside that extra additional 10.
Okay.
All right, one of the big problems with this, Mayor, and that's why I wanted to pull from the agenda and have the staff to explain it. One of the big problems with this is people pay their bills, and a lot of these people are on fixed income. They pay their bills in a 30-day cycle. What this is going to do is remove 10 days from that 30-day cycle for them to be able to pay their utility bill. So where normally they would be able to pay all of their bills for November because they've got this additional 10 days. Now, come December the 20th, they are going to have to pay their utility bill again somehow, or somebody's going to have to help them pay it so that they can get on a 30-day cycle again with their utility bill. That's where the problem is coming in. That's where these individuals who are on fixed incomes, who are on oxygen, or who are on nebulizers, or who are on whatever they need in order to live a good, reasonable quality of life. That's where the problem's going to come in for them. And I just wanted to make council aware of it. I don't know what we can do to try to help people so that they can get back to a 30-day cycle for paying their utility bills. But a lot of the individuals that are going to be impacted by this, they have been on the medical extensions for a number of years. And when you're on a fixed income, it is very, very difficult to shorten your pay cycle for any of your major bills by 10 days because of when you get your paycheck.
I'd like to see some way or another to work that out.
Well, I tell you.
Well, we got an attorney. We can always leave it the way it is.
I move we leave it like it is.
If somebody challenges it, or you can go along with state statute, one of the two.
I'll make a motion we leave it like it is.
I second that motion.
I have a motion, Judge, you say a second?
I second.
All right, I have a motion, a second. Any other discussion?
Question.
Yes.
Could you maybe tease out the different changes, because the proposal incorporates a number of changes. The 10-day issue is just one element. Account registration, use of IDs, and so on and so forth.
Okay, well, I was not aware of those changes, Mayor. The one that we're discussing now is the only one that I was aware of. I was not aware of the others.
Yes, there's several different changes that do address, as Larry just mentioned, the need to remove military ID. There were several modifications, but we can certainly just, modify it to the customer service policy as council directs us to.
Should it go back to the Public Safety Committee? I mean, not Public Safety, the Customer Service Committee?
When are we gonna get the rest of this information? I've never heard of, this is all new ballgame to me.
Oh, it was covered in the customer service.
I wasn't there, I'm not on the committee.
Well, but again,
That's the problem.
But again, I was
No, that
not.
ain't the
many
problem. The
committees.
problem
Yes,
is
it
it
is.
needs to come to council. That ain't the problem.
But again, I was not aware of the other changes that you're referring to. I think that maybe they were going
We're
to.
strictly talking about the medical.
The medical was the one that I was, because I know how this is going to impact people's budgets. And that was the one that I was concerned about. The rest of it, I wasn't aware of.
Well, why don't
Maybe
we-
I just felt, maybe I wasn't reading during that meeting or something, but I wasn't aware of those other changes.
Well, now, what is,
Why don't we just bring it back to council at another meeting and bring it to the full council and then let us discuss it then?
And we have been counseling folks as they've been calling. Right now is actually a good time for them to try and double up or pay like 1.5 bills and then 1.5 bills again next month to try to bring them more current. The ladies and the gentlemen in customer service have been working, to help folks organize that and get set up so that they will succeed. Even the lady that I talked to today said, my bills in the summer were $300-400. This would have been a real problem back then. It's not so bad now. She said, my bill's only $120 this month and $106 next month. She said they're half of what they were. So she said, she was able to make the change and implement it, and she understood.
My motion, I'm gonna leave my motion on the floor and let it address the medical. Now, if you wanna bring back the rest of it at another time, but I'm not gonna change my vote on the medical.
well, do you know what the rest of it is?
No.
Well, how do you know?
Well, that's what he's
I'm
saying.
gonna address the medical end, and we'll look at the rest of it
when they bring it back to the council or carry it back to them, whatever they decide to do with it.
Because you've already stated that you had given these people the 1st of November, but you were graciously going to wait until really January 1 to enact this. Was that not correct?
If they
Right,
call.
so we got a
Yeah,
little
they just
time.
have to call.
I would request the board allow us to withdraw this item, and we'll bring it back to you in another form.
Okay.
All right, that's.
You withdraw your motion?
I withdraw my.
And we're going to talk about it as a council and not back to committee, is that correct?
If that is y'all's interest, and that,
Yes.
and that is your interest.
Right, full council.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, regular agenda. Have a public hearing, the U.S. Department of Justice Bureau Assistant Grant Program. We have a public hearing on the grant. Who's gonna, anybody gonna talk about that? Public hearing.
You're up.
David.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Mr. Pace. The police department's requesting to receive a grant from the United States Department of Justice for the total amount of $13,134. That money will be used to purchase a new pole camera, surveillance camera, to replace one that's outdated and is no longer functioning properly. Also, several like tree cameras to be used for surveillance and crime prevention, and a new software to be used for investigative purposes to assist investigators to locate individuals that it gives them a little bit deeper root investigation skills and all that they can locate individuals for.
How much money was the grant for?
It's $13,134.
Is this a matching grant, or is this just out?
There's a no match.
Okay. Council, have any questions? Hearing none, thank you, sir. This is a public hearing. Anyone here who would like to speak in favor? Hearing none, anyone here who would like to speak in opposition? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and take action.
Motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve? Motion to second, all in favor? Any opposed? Hearing none, that'll pass. Thank you, Mr. Morton. Item 9. You can take that.
I got that.
Okay.
Mayor, that is an amended resolution to create the policy for scheduling mayoral committee meetings. At your last meeting, you adopted a policy that dealt with the scheduling and rescheduling, cancellation of mayoral committee meetings. After it went into effect, we were asked to make an exception, create an exemption in it where if staff determined that there were no items to go before a committee, the committee chair could cancel the meeting. And at your request, we revised the policy to include that, and we provide it to council for adoption if council wishes to do so. We think it is an appropriate thing to do, as it represented a prior practice that you had before we put a policy in place.
Okay. Anyone comment on that?
Is that what you want, Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I move we do it.
Second.
Have a motion, second, all in favor? Any opposed? Hearing none, that'll pass. That way you don't have to call me every time you want to make a... Okay, item 11, public comment period. Anyone here?
No, you have one more.
I'm sorry, 10. Award of contract with sanitary sewer. I marked off the wrong one when I was going down the list. Item 10.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. This has been taken off the consent agenda. We didn't have a quorum today at the Environment Water Resource Committee meeting, so it's coming to you without a committee recommendation. But for your consideration this evening is a contract award for rehabilitation of sanitary sewer mains. We have a comprehensive program to rehab our sewer system, one piece of which is to use contractors to do lining of sewer mains. So we received responsive proposals from 2 contractors that are outlined in your staff report. The contract involves lining up to 4,158 feet of 6-inch, 8-inch, and 10-inch sewer mains and including the service reconnections for those mains. The list of streets is in your staff report. It is staff's recommendation that council award this contract bid for the amount described in the staff report, and also recommend a 5% contingency allowance and authorize the city manager to make contract changes up to that amount if needed. Budgeted funds are available. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Well, Russ, you always do a good job. I move we approve the request.
Second.
Have a motion, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that's approved, Mr. Rush. Item 11, public comment periods. Anyone here who would like to address the council? Okay, hearing none.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I move to go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute, Sections 143-318, 11A and 1, A3 and A6, to prevent the disclosure of information that is privileged or confidential pursuant to the law of this state or of the United States and not considered a public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of the General Statutes, to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the city's attorneys and the city council, and to consider and give instructions to the city attorneys concerning handling of a claim, and to consider the qualifications, competence, performance, character, and fitness of an individual public officer or employee.
All of that for a personnel matter.
Actually, you also have a claim-related matter as well, ma'am.
Okay, I have a motion to go in closed session. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are going into closed session.